Hi, I'm Gary Waite. I'm about to paint this painting as a demonstration on a small canvas using a palette knife with a small amount of brushwork. The painting you see in the insert is my original painting that I'm going to use as a guide for the present demonstration. I gave the canvas a coat of dioxazine purple acrylic paint, which is now dry. It only takes an hour or so to dry, and I usually use that as a background for my paintings. And now I'm just using chalk to draw a sketch of the painting that I'm going to do. So there are a couple of islands shown in the ocean, not too far offshore, and the vertical straight lines indicate where I want to place tall trees. The color I use for the rocks in the water and on the shore are made up of a mixture of manganese violet and cadmium yellow medium. It makes a good brown for doing rocks or tree trunks. The highlights on the rocks are titanium white and some cadmium yellow. The dark areas on the rocks are made up of manganese violet and sometimes a little bit of ultramarine blue where I want it to be deeper and darker. I'm adding some cadmium red to the manganese violet on a few places in the rocks to enhance the colors. I'm starting to define the area where the sky meets the ocean on the horizon using cerulean blue and titanium white. I'm I'm painting the evergreens with a mixture of blue and cadmium yellow to get a dark green, and I'll make each tree a slightly different color just to get variation across the landscape. So that's ultramarine blue I'm using right now with some yellow. And I'm putting kind of a darker base on it, which will go lighter as the painting progresses. I'm indicating a bit of dark brown on that tree in particular. And some of the other ones will be more of a yellow color. And I'm exaggerating the brown by using some cadmium red, which will work into the painting. The cadmium yellow mixed with a bit of sap green makes a nice contrast with the darker colors of the trees. I'll use this idea continually to develop the trees. The trees on the left-hand side on that island are quite far in the distance, and so I don't want to add too much color there. The darker colors and blues will make that part of the forest on those islands recede a bit. It's good to have warm colors in the foreground and then cooler colors for distant trees. Now I'm defining a grassy area on the island in the foreground using cadmium yellow medium. The brighter color makes it look like it's horizontal and that the sun is shining on the ground between the rocks. I will add a bit of green touches later on. Now I will do the sky with the mixture of cerulean blue and titanium white. It's not really mixed, I just pick it off the palette and apply it in various places and blend colors on the canvas. Unfortunately, my camera overexposed the image. I didn't notice it till I was finished, and it's difficult to get that corrected, so it doesn't matter for anything except when I'm painting the sky. You can't really quite tell what I'm doing there. I'm applying paint for the sky between the tree's branches, as I usually do. I think it makes the painting more interesting. If you've seen my other videos, I did the same thing with the sky on those. That's my typical method of doing a sky, rather than painting a flat blue shade. There is actually quite a bit of blue on the sky, which you can't tell because of my bad lighting. It will show up on the final painting when I take a finished image. A large part of this painting is sky, so I want to make it as interesting as I can. By applying the paint the way I do. I will add a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow on the horizon line later on. Maybe a bit of red further up to indicate reflections in the sky. Skies are usually many colors. Blue's only one of them. Sometimes I paint skies that are entirely orange or red and purple, and it sounds strange, but the paintings usually work out, especially if it's a sunset. I'm defining the trees by actually painting the sky that's showing between the trees. And then I will go over it a bit later and add some darker colors. So this is a little bit like doing abstract work, which I don't usually do, but to do it on this part of the trees is kind of fun. I move around as much as I can while I'm painting so I don't get bogged down in any one corner. And when I feel like I've done enough in one spot, I'll look at the next easiest thing to do. I'm doing the horizon line a little bit. You might notice that it's a little bit crooked and wavy, but it makes it look like the ocean has lots of power in the distance. You can see the layout of my palette going from warm to cool, cadmium, red, orange and yellow in the upper left-hand corner, and then I've got manganese violet, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, cerulean blue, and sap green. And you notice the paint is not mixed up very much. Considering I've done half of a painting, I just picked the painting off of the palette and put it straight on the canvas, as I mentioned before. So I'm now applying ultramarine blue on the distant part of the ocean. I want the distant ocean to be darker to make it recede more. As I go forward in the ocean and the water, it'll get to be a lighter color, reflecting some of the tree colors, a little bit of green and lighter blues. So I'm using titanium white and some cerulean blue in the water in the foreground, so I can get a variation in values as I come forward. I'm mixing a little bit of sap green in the watercolors, which would you would expect to see a bit of a greenish reflection off some of the trees on the island that are close to it. And I'll mix blue and green, ultramarine, phthalo blue. and white, and then I'll paint the rocks in a moment. I'm painting some along the bottom edge of the painting, but I don't have my easel set up quite right. So I'll have to adjust it so that I can actually get paint at the bottom edge there. Now I will start to block in the rocks in the foreground using brown that I get from mixing manganese violet with cadmium yellow medium. I'm highlighting the top of the rocks where the sun would be shining off of them with white in this case. Sometimes I would use either yellow or a light red color. And then in the foreground on the lower right, I'm going to indicate a shoreline with some warm colors, a bit of red and brown to make it appear closer. The rocks in this region are all sedimentary, so they show up in layers. So I'm painting the rocks in the water as well as the ones on the island with the same diagonal direction. So I'm using some ultramarine blue on the island to indicate where the tide line is. The dark color is to be expected at the base of the rocks, indicating a shadow area. Now I'm adding titanium white at the shoreline. I try and make it look like water splashing up on the shore and on the rocks. It's just titanium white. And when you mix it this way, it actually mixes slightly with the blue in the water. So you don't just have pure white on the canvas, you've got a mixture of blue and white. So now I'll indicate wave patterns in the water, or try to. And splashes around the rocks, makes it a bit. I think that's working. I'm indicating distant waves near the horizon line with very fine lines of white paint. As I get closer, the waves will get larger in size. But the thin lines make it look like it's quite far away. Waves are very easy to make, so you have to be careful not to overdo this part. So I'm thinking about lights and darks and high contrast areas to enhance the image. Every so often, it's a good idea to step back from your painting to get a distant view to see an overall look of what's going on. I have done this quite a bit in the demonstration, but I skipped forward during these periods. using some manganese violet to darken some areas of the rocks. The painting is almost done, so it's a little bit slow at this point while I stop and think about what the final stages are. The painting I'm copying this from took about 4 hours to do. The reason for that is, first of all, I had to define the composition, and it takes more time to do the original one than it does to actually copy it. Although I'm not really copying it, I'm just using it as a guide. I didn't put in the same number of trees, or I didn't put the colors in the same place. I just use it as a guide for when I get stopped and wonder what to do next. A few red highlights is always a good idea. So now I will go back into the trees. I'm adding a mixture of sap green and cadmium yellow in various areas, and some lights and darks. I want to give the forest some depth by the dark colors look like it's going further in, and the lighter colors are reflecting sunshine from above. The tree at the edge of the island is in silhouette, so I'm being careful on how I define where the branches are. So I'm adding some darker colors on the left-hand tree, which will make it contrast with the light-colored sky in the middle there. I could have used a lighter color, but since I want some trees light and some trees dark, I might as well use dark where it shows up the most. And I had just noticed that tree was bending over a bit, but that's okay. That's a natural thing to see in the forest, especially ones that are on the edge of an island. Now I will paint the tree right at the edge of the canvas in a very dark color, which is suitable so that your eye is not drawn to the outside edge by bright colors. So you'll notice the trees are variation in light and dark and warm and cool as you go across the canvas. So I want to make the tree in the foreground there a lighter color to make it stand out and contrast with the other ones. So I'll use cadmium yellow with a little bit of sap green. The grassy area on the island needs a bit of work. Add a bit of cadmium yellow and a little bit of sap green to make those flat areas stand out. and a little bit on the edge of the rock there. So I'm blending the distant trees, adding a little bit of yellow and mixing it with the blues and greens that are already on the canvas. Since it's far away, you need less detail. I'm also not happy with those trees going up so high, so I'll scrape off that paint and shorten the trees a bit. So I had to scrape the paint off fairly thoroughly, and then when I add the white paint, I have to apply it in a thick coat, otherwise the color underneath will show through too much. Now I'll indicate some really distant trees as fine lines at the edge of the other island. That's phthalo blue. Make a bit of a break between those trees and the closer ones. And put a rock for them to grow out of. Just in the distance. Now I am looking around the painting and touching up little details here and there with a bit of light or dark paint, depending on what's needed. I'm not too pleased with the group of trees on that distant island. They got all kind of blended together, and it's kind of a boring shape on the profile across the top, so I'll change that. Now I will add in a few vertical lines to indicate smaller trees in the forest in the background. It kind of enhances the look of the woods a little bit. The woods on the island need a little bit of red. So I'll add a few touches, which I usually like to do on a painting. That makes the other colors stand out. That's probably all I need. And then some dark paint near the base of the trees. It gives it the forest some depth in that area. And it's sort of a high contrast area as well for values, which I like to do. Now I will do a small amount of brushwork to fill in a few purple dots on the sky and a little bit of work on the water. Doesn't really need much. I guess I could really do this with a palette knife, but this is easier for this part. There, that looks a little better in the water. Smooth it out with the brush. That would not work very well with the palette knife. I'm adding a little touch of red in the sky. I think that looks better. You'll see it in the final photograph. It's a bit too bright to see what's going on here. I'm still not happy with the trees on that distant island. That's a pretty boring shape, so remove a bit of paint and try and make it more interesting. Make the trees various different heights and put a bit more sky showing through. Okay, that looks better. Now a few more little touch-ups here and there, and I will be done. I'll put a bit more red on the foreground, which is actually the edge of the beach, to make it look closer and stand out a bit better. And then cover it up with a little bit of brown so it's not quite so intense. it's completed now. I hope you have enjoyed watching this.